Howdy, I'm Matt from Jaggers Brewing Co. Today we're going to talk about all the brewing competitions that I entered for 2022. We're going to go over some score sheets. But before we do that, I'd like to take a moment and talk to you about the Master Homebrewer Program, MHP. So, have you ever found yourself with a bunch of these score sheets? Didn't know what to do with them? Didn't know if they were any more useful to you other than maybe some brewing notes and stuff like that from the judges? Well, there's a program out here that allows you to take these score sheets and gain ranks within their internal program. So the Master Homebrewing Program, it does a couple things. So what is it? So it's an organization to help people with the mastery of homebrewing or amateur brewing. What we do is we help recognize the excellence in the quality of beer, cider, and mead by helping push people outside their comfort zones and compete in competitions. So the way that you rank up is you take these score sheets and you're going to submit them into the system, and then they're going to be verified that you scored that on the score sheet. And you'll just the score will go into a column for that style guideline, and so now it's marked that you scored a 28, a 32, 47 in a particular category. And as you accumulate these score sheets, you enter more in that particular category. Other categories, you go outside the norm and start really pushing your own boundaries, and maybe you start brewing meads and ciders. You have a dashboard that you're able to view and track all your stats there. So a quick example here is to gain the novice rank, you would need 5 sheets of at least a 21 in 4 categories. Now, to advance past the novice, you'll have to get to the apprentice. You will need 10 score sheets in 7 categories of at least a 21 with 1 cider or a mead or a sour beer. So that's kind of the basics of it. Now there's a couple different memberships here within MHP, and so the first one is there's a free option, and you'll get this dashboard that you'll be able to track all your stats and stuff like that at no charge to you. The second one is an individual paid deal, and you'll start collecting these badges like you see here on my hat. This one here is proficient. I've actually have ranked up since getting that particular badge, so I'm waiting for that one to come in so I can pin it on my hat. And the cool thing is when you start going out to homebrew clubs and competitions and stuff, and more people see these badges, they understand your particular level or expertise in that, and everybody knows that you're trying to grow and expand. Well, if you're a lower level ranked person and you see somebody with, say, Master, you know that they know an awful lot about fermentation and styles and everything like that, and they're probably going to offer you some assistance if you ask them for help. So the last membership is there's a club level membership, and you're able to get your whole brew club in on this for a really inexpensive fee, and it's unlimited as far as the membership goes. And it's a good way to get a whole brew club together and get them serious about making better quality beer, have a good competitive edge going, and it gives you a little bit of bragging rights with your friends and stuff like that to see what rank is where and who is what. So it's a pretty fun thing. And additional to those badges though, there's other badges and awards that you can win outside of just normal ranks. There's things like Lord of Lager, which is pretty much all lager oriented, so you need a bunch of lagers to be able to get that badge. There's one of Prince of Pucker, and that's primarily sours, but there's individual ones for IPAs, ciders, and meads, and so on and so forth. There's other additional badges like stars, bronze stars, silver star, gold stars, and all those indicate things like a very good showing at competitions, like, you know, you finished in the top 5% of your circuits or whatever. So for more information, click the link down below in the description and it'll take you directly to MHP, and it's a pretty fun, very inexpensive way to kind of just help you push outside your normal routines of brewing and your normal styles of brewing. Additionally, just real quick, MHP now has a store where you can get some MHP branded items, so that's fun and exciting. Stay tuned for more on that. They're talking about adding a lot more different things to that storefront. Right now there's lanyards, there's some stickers. You're able to buy those badges that you might have missed out on while ranking up. So with all that said, while we talk about these score sheets, let's drink a beer. So today's beer is going to be from Jester King. I stopped off at a local place that has a bunch of beer on tap, and it's called Nobi Public House. Pretty cool place. They serve food and beer there, and I got this pretty awesome growler from them. So this Jester King beer, which they're pretty well known for a lot of their farmhouse ales and saison type beers. This is a imperial stout of theirs called Black Metal, and I knew right away that I wanted to take some of this home when I had it there. So we're gonna sip on this while we talk about score sheets and competitions. Now, I'm not going to go over every single beer that I entered last year or every single competition that I entered. I took a handful of beers, how they performed. I took the notes, compared them to what all the judges said, and just kind of got a general overview of every particular beer to get a good idea of things where I need to improve, all those common things that we saw and things like that. And then I took my own individual notes of where I think that those improvements should end up on that particular beer. The first beer that I want to talk about is called Weisse. And so it was during the Berliner kind of I guess style that I got stuck into for a little bit, just trying to perfect that and play around with it and kind of learn some stuff as far as the style goes, and, like, you know, different things that lacto does and whatnot. So this one went into 4 competitions and it scored a 27 first time out. Now this is all the same batch of beer, okay? I didn't rebrew this to re-enter it or anything. So it scored a 27, a 32, a 34, and then a 44.5. So by the style guidelines, it's supposed to be a pale, refreshing, low alcohol with clean sourness beer. Taking all those judges' notes together, how did we do? So on the aroma, it looks like we pretty much hit all the style notes. We had a little bit of funk, a little bit of fruit. They noticed that there was malt present, and it was noted on one particular one that there might just need to be a touch more maltiness on the aroma. As far as the appearance goes, it looks like we hit all the marks. One competition took a point away because of the head dissipating quickly. As far as the flavor, this is where the widest difference was between all the competitions. Let's see here. In one competition, it looked like we pretty much nailed it. The hot profile of none detected, that's where we're supposed to be. Everybody just had a different variance there as far as the flavor. As far as the flavor went. See here, it was close on malt, notes, and sourness. And so I guess depending on what competition it went to, they all had their own take on how sour it should be, how malty it should be there. On the mouthfeel, we hit the light body, we hit the crispness, we hit the low to no alcohol, and the acidity. We missed the carbonation. So a note on the carbonation, I bottle conditioned all these in the standard brown glass beer bottles. Like I said, they were all bottle conditioned. Generally, you're probably going to want a little bit more higher carbonation than you can get in those bottles, so you need to probably look at those big, thicker Belgian type bottles to be able to have a really good effervescent showing as far as the carbonation's considered. Now, the overall notes from the judges, they all on the lower scoring side said that it needs more tartness, needs a higher carbonation, and a little bit more complexity, especially when contributed to the sourness. Now, we already know where we missed out on the carbonation. I mean, it is what it is there. You know, things like sourness and bitterness, all those are, I think, more of the personal, aspects of judging. And so when it comes to judging, we're trying to personalize and objectify a personal experience as far as that goes. And so what I might taste and what you might taste are a little bit different. So I guess that accounts a little bit for some of the differences there in the scores, but I really feel like that's a pretty wide score difference, and there's about 6 to 8 months difference here between the first competition out and the last competition score sheet to come in. So where do we go for improvements on this? We had been using the White Labs WLP 677 Lacto. I really like this particular strain. I think it's very consistent as far as the pH drop goes. It's very consistent as far as tasting the same batch to batch, and all that. For the yeast, we used the Y yeast 1007, the German ale, due to its noted cleanliness upon fermentation. So I don't think there's a whole lot that we can do with the grain bill for the particular style, because we have to be careful there. We needed low ABV, and we do need some malt complexity there. So maybe I need to change up maybe like the manufacturer or the maltster of some of these malts and see if maybe I can gain a little bit more complexity by just using the same particular two malts, being wheat and barley. So we'll see maybe what we can do with that, but I think I'm going to pretty much leave that alone for the most part. I think maybe we can try to get a little bit more complexity with the lacto. Now, I'm a big fan of the Omega, what is it? I have it here in my notes, give me one moment. Omega OYL 605, their lacto blend. To me, that it has a better taste, but it's a little less inconsistent as far as time to drop pH, or even just the pH range that it stays in. I've had it drop a little bit lower, stay a little bit higher. This beer, if I remember correctly, it got down to 3.4 pH. So that should be right in target. I kinda, after having seen some of these score sheets come back originally, was thinking maybe 3.2 might need to be where it's at. So maybe that might be something that we try to do, is try to get it down to that 3.2 and see what happens. But maybe we need to mix some of our own lacto cultures there. The thought did cross my mind, though, that I think traditionally these things aren't necessarily kettle soured, you know, so they're a little bit more mixed fermentation, and maybe we need to head down that way. So those are some interesting thoughts there. Let's see here. Let me look at the rest of my notes. So one thing that I did note, though, and we briefly touched upon this when we were talking about the scores, is the older this thing got, the better scores it got. And so I think that signifies the possibility of two things. You know, we're led to believe that sometimes the older that a beer gets, the more that it starts to unravel itself and unwind itself and not be as fresh and things like that. And so maybe a little bit of that's opposite. I would have thought this being a low ABV beer, a light, clean, clear beer, that time wouldn't have helped it. Another possibility, though, as far as the competitions go versus the scores, is, you know, that first competition it went out was really at the very beginning of the year. You know, I had that beer probably ready to go to competition, I would say within 2 months of it actually needing to go out. So I think maybe there's the possibility that some of these competitions judge a little harsher or a little bit more hardcore towards the beginning of the year versus, you know, a little bit later in the year. The second beer that we're going to talk about is the Roggenbier. You can see that video, Roggenbier, and this one under the category 27. Let's see here. First time out, scored a 23. Next time out, a 34.5, then a 37, and then it scored a 38 and a 39. This went to a mini best of show, so that was 1, 2, 3, so 4 competitions it went into. And as far as the beer profile should be, as far as the BJCP goes, is it should be kind of like a Dunkel Bock with rye instead of wheat. Now, gathering all those notes together over the aroma, this was kind of wild here. There was some that said no to some that said moderate hints of the style as far as the aroma goes. And so here again, I think we have that whole, you know, you're trying to objectify the personal experience. Some noted that, let's see here. Now on appearance, everybody pretty much nailed it to style. Only one competition complained of haze, and that's got to be due to the bottle conditioning that I did on it. I'm not quite set up yet to fill from the keg and send off to competitions, so all these beers last year were all bottle conditioned. For the flavor, now this is where the most points were hit, and let's see here. We had all kinds of notes, everything from no complexity to a very complex beer. Some that said that there was no yeast character to it, to some that said that it had a very nice yeast character to it. So for this one, I used a Hefeweizen strain yeast. I figured that it should be kind of like the way that I always interpreted it anyways, was more of like a rye Hefeweizen. So I thought that that particular Hefeweizen strain should be in there. So maybe that had a little bit to do too with the haze, now that I think about it. For the mouthfeel, everybody pretty much said that it was to style. There were no notes from the missing points that were taken away or just not attributed to that particular part of the section. Overall, from all the comments, we got everything from not the style to pretty much a classic example of the style. There was one note of oxidation and too many esters. Somebody said that they would have liked to see a little bit more banana and clove to the style. So for the improvements that I think on this style, I think that this is an example that I need to move away and focus more on, or move away the focus from bottle conditioning and more towards the fill from keg for competition beers. Now I've brewed this beer a couple times and it's always been for just personal and friends consumption. You know, I just said, well, look, I've got all this beer laying around, let's just see what happens. Let's see here. So one of my friends, he's from Germany, and after having a few of these throughout the years, he always says that this kind of reminds him of what he would have back home. So I always kind of took a little bit of pride that that you know, it was a little bit more authentic than I thought that it would have turned out to be. So that's always been pretty cool to me. I guess taking his word for it versus the judge's words for it, I guess that aligns it a little bit more back to the classic to style. But there again, we have such a wide range in the scores. So some of the funny comment that I took away from it was that one of the judges said, despite the low score, I'm gonna drink the whole bottle. So I guess it was a good beer, it just wasn't to style in his taste. So now we come to the Dunkel Bock, and had I kept better records here, I would have a little bit more to go off of. I know that it went to 2 competitions, but I could only find the score sheets for one of them, and I don't have anybody to blame but myself on that one, and I'll just take that for what it was. Now this was a beer that you saw on the channel, the Dunkel Bock, and it turned out to be a very good beer. A little bit of age did a lot of wonders for this one. I'm kind of upset that I don't have any more to have, or much less show during this. But according to BJC P, dark, strong, multi-lager, toasty, and not sweet finish. So from the score sheets, this one did also go to best of show, or mini best of show, sorry. So as far as the aroma, within style, with no notes of the points taken away or not assigned. Appearance and style, everybody pretty much hit this one with the full amount of points allowed. Let's see here, flavor, and they have a note of astringency, but mostly good for the style. So maybe some of that came from some of the darker malts there. Mouthfeel, close to style, with no notes of points taken away or not given for that particular section. It looks like, though, looking at the way that they've marked it and scheduled it on some of these things, that it looks like it was a little bit on the thin side, and that was something that some friends and I both kind of noted when we were drinking that beer. Overall, let's see here, mostly edging over to classic style. There was one small note of, it was a little on the high side for the alcohol allowance there. Now that being on like the mouthfeel and stuff like that. And they made a note that fermentation needs to be kept in check on that. So as far as improvements go on this one, I would say that this is another example of where I need to stop no chilling like competition beers, right? Unless it's a little closer to style. I think that might have kind of came back to bite me a little bit in the butt on this one. Maybe that's where it picked up on some of the astringency too. One thing also to note here is during that brew day, we missed our step mash schedules and our temperatures. We had that stuck mash, we had a stuck sparge, and so if kind of get that stuff under control, I think that this thing would have actually probably even won a medal. We need to get the temp down faster for the wort and get that peak, that yeast pitch good, healthy going, and get it in that beer as soon as possible, you know. For this one, this is actually kind of like a little fun experiment that I did. So if you go back and you look at the Texmalt smash beer that we did, I ended up having a lot of that stuff sitting around and I wanted it to go away. It wasn't a bad beer, I had a bunch of beer here, and so I figured why not send it off to some competitions. So I thought that it would be kind of fun to pick on basically one competition and send it in on a couple different categories. So the first one that it went in under was 12C, which is an English IPA, and it scored a 31.5. The second category it went in was American Pale Ale, and it scored a 42 and went to mini best of show for that competition. And then it went in under a third category, American IPA 21A, and it scored a 25. So that pretty well kind of tracks, especially when we kind of start seeing some of the notes on this thing, and you know that what we did. So we took a single malt and a single hop combination, and we used USO5 for fermentation. And it's kind of funny though, with that particular malt, it's supposed to be like a replacement for a Maris Otter, right? And we have some, you know, German noble hops going into this beer. So in my mind, it really doesn't belong in an American IPA or American Pale Ale. But when I messed up on the additions in the bowl for the hops, instead of doing a 60, 30, 15 and like 5 minute addition, I accidentally did two 30-minute additions. So one of that 15 minutes addition, you know, accidentally got used somewhere else where it wasn't supposed to be. And so it turned out to be kind of like a pretty strongly bittered beer. If I remember right, I think the IBUs were something right around 38, 40 IBUs. What can I say? You know, I took a chance, and I'm really happy with the results. I think it's kind of funny, like how they turned out as far as it going to mini best of show under American Pale Ale. But a lot of the notes that were shared for it said that it was a classic example of the style, and I just thought that was weird, being like the Saaz hops and you know, the replacement for Maris Otter malts. So another couple notables here. I don't have a whole lot of, I wasn't really going to talk about these too much, but it is what it is. So the Kentucky Common, you haven't seen it on my channel yet. I've brewed that style quite a few times for myself and some friends, and I had what I thought was a pretty solid recipe, but I said there's no way that this thing is going to present well in competition, right? So I changed up the recipe. I totally went a different way, and boy, it went bad as far as the competition went. It pretty much scored a 27 in every competition that I entered it in. There were notes of DMS, acidic twang, astringent, funky, not balanced, no roast, caramel, toffee, malt, or hop flavors, and that it's thin. I should have brewed my standard recipe as far as that goes, I haven't gotten around to brewing that in the last, I don't know, 8 to 10 months or so. So I really kind of missed out on being able to re-enter that throughout the year. But like I said, you know, all these were single batches, the same batch going into different competitions, and I wanted to see, you know, what the notes and stuff would be. So my greatest takeaway for this particular deal especially is to not necessarily brew directly for competitions thinking that you know, I was going to know exactly what they were looking for. I should have just brewed my standard recipe, something that I'm familiar with, something that I know, and took all those notes and all those lessons learned there and try to adapt it into that recipe instead of just coming up with a recipe from scratch for like a competition only type of beer. The next one was kind of the same thing. Not that I brewed this one specifically for competition. I brewed it for my own taste, but I entered it in quite a few competitions last year, and this thing in every competition scored a 33, right down the middle of all of them. The notes were that it was a little too fruity on the esters, plastic, phenolic, and let's see here. What can I say on this one? This was my first lager in that particular style of lagering, you know, that technique, you know, and it was the first time I ever brewed a Marzen. I'm really happy with the way that one turned out. I think it was very nice. I just released that video not too long ago. It's still a pretty good beer now that it's crossed over into about that year mark. The mistakes that I made during this one is, here again, you know, we're talking about, I no chilled it, and I should have got that yeast on it sooner. And maybe try to do fermentation a little bit lower in temperatures, you know. But it was my first lager, and I feel like I learned a lot, and a lot of those particular lessons that I learned, I think that they moved over very well into things like the Dunkel Bock, the Italian Pilsner. I already kind of knew some of the stuff that I needed to do going into those things. So just to recap, you know, some of the things that I need to do here that kind of stand out a little bit anyways is I need to focus on getting that yeast pitch sooner. I need to focus a little bit more on some of that temperature control to kind of help take away some of those esters, you know, get that yeast really happy in some of those lower temperatures instead of just room fermentation. All of last year's beers, for the most part, and before, you know, since the start of this channel, have kind of been more focused on, you know, the average person just trying to make beer at home and have a good time and make some decent beer. You know, a lot of these esters and some of these phenolics and, you know, mouthfeels and things like that, a lot of this stuff is things that, unless you're competing, you're probably not going to be made aware of that's in your beer. You might be able to pick up on some of these things and, you know, post in some Facebook groups and say, hey guys, this beer tastes like Band-Aids, or, you know, cardboard, or whatever, and people are able to help you out. But until you start putting some of these things into competition, then that's when you really start to kind of pick up a little bit more of these things as a home brewer to kind of help you make some better beers and have some different ideas on what to do next, where to go next, what to brew next. My takeaway from an entrant into these competitions, I've got a little bit of beef, you know. I was taking some of these scores, you know, the year before last and at the beginning of last year and stuff to heart, because, you know, like, this was a very personal thing. I felt like I put myself out there, and I took it personally, like as a little bit of attack and beat up and stuff like that. And then I came to the realization is they're not tasting the same things that I'm tasting, and vice versa. I think that some of these people might be a little too critical still, but I think overall, I think that they're trying to say, I tasted this, I smelled that, it looks like this to me, and you just need to take a good collection over that particular beer, that particular batch, over quite a few competitions, and then sit back and say, okay, now let's pull all the constructive criticism out of these things and apply them to these recipes, to my techniques, to my methods, to my recipe building, and work your way out from there. But also, as an entrant, here's kind of where I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, is I think we need some better judges with better notes. You know, with the rising cost of some of these competitions to enter, you know, we're going from some, you know, like, okay, it's not that much money to enter this beer, you know, shipping isn't that much, to being where, you know, they want 2 or 3 times more, or a time and a half again more on entry fees. They're wanting, you know, 4 bottles for one particular subcategory, or whatever the thing is. I think if we're taking the investment of our hard-earned money and putting it out for these competitions, we should have some better judges, and we should have some better notes on this. You know, too many times I think you can see where, you know, one judge is kind of more of the senior and one is more of the junior, and so you've got one guy kind of leading the other one, where this guy's voice isn't so much heard, but this one, you know, is. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the person that's got the certifications or whatever, but I think we saw here in some of these score sheets, especially early in the year, where some of these scores were lower, but at the end of the year they were higher. And so I think, in my mind, that has a little bit to do with the judging quality, you know. I also think, though, too, I think we need to move away from a lot of these handwritten score sheets. You know, let's all face it, we all have our own writing style. Some are sloppier than others. Some are harder for other people to read than others. You know, I think that there's a couple score sheets that before I shot this video, I was going back and taking notes. There was like a couple sentences in a few of them. I couldn't tell what they were talking about. They were written very lightly with pencil, you know, and then they're copied and then scanned, you know, and so we've got like light impressions that we can't really tell what's being said, and so we have a lot of missing notes, and a lot of those other missing notes go again back to that score from the judges, you know, not saying where, hey, I didn't award you a point here, I took a point away from there, or whatever the case may be there. I think we also need more certified and qualified judges. I plan on trying to start my way down that path. I want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. I want to make sure that I'm going to leave good notes for anybody beer that I judge, and start the path down certification. I don't know how far down the path that I plan to get. I've only vaguely aware that there is, you know, some programs to help you out on that, and I'm interested in doing the research and looking all that stuff over and starting down that path. You know, I was able to sit down in a few competitions and kind of be that junior there, and so I learned that through sitting with a couple judges that there's a couple different ways to judge the beer, you know, and it was nice to kind of sit down and talk to those people and learn how they taste it and how they would score a beer. You know, I think I've got a better handle on what things like people are looking for when I submit a beer. I got a better handle on generally how to pick something up and taste the things that they are supposed to be in that style. But things also in the style guidelines, you know, what's moderate, what's you know, acceptable and things like that. You know, I got a lot of learning to do, and I don't think that those are always cookie cutter clear either. So I think that there's some work that needs to be done as far as that. Like I said, I plan on trying to do my best to be part of the solution and not the problem as far as that goes. The only other thing that I can take away from being an entrant into these competitions is that I need to get out of the familiar styles that I'm used to drinking. I need to drink a few different styles. So basically, I need to do my own research and drink more beer. But when it comes down to it, I think you know, doing things like this will help me have a greater appreciation, just in general, for everything. You know, meads, wines, ciders, all that stuff is the same thing. And so it's kind of good that if all you drink is Hefeweizens, every once in a while go out and try to drink something else, and maybe you can start to pick up on some of that other stuff that's in that Hefeweizen or that stout and come back to it and have a greater appreciation to something that you maybe didn't have before. So with all that said, I know that was a kind of long-winded, some of it might have been boring, but to those of you that stuck it out to the end, thank you so much for dropping in, coming in, checking us out, experiencing this wild ride of competitions and score sheets. To you guys, cheers. Let's give these dogs a few minutes to settle down. It also helps to... Oh man, I had it and then I freaking lost it.